Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how I got to 1100 Paragon on the first day of season 25. So basically this entire video is going to showcase how I managed to get from level 1 all the way up to level 70 and then also get 1100 Paragon on day 1 of the season. So as you can see here, this is still on day 1. It's a 24-hour stream and that's about 15 minutes before we hit the 24-hour mark. And as you can see, I'm 1144 Paragon and I'm currently doing a 130 because I really want to try and get the rank 1 clear for day 1 of the season. So I'm going to show in this video how I managed to do all of this, how I managed to gear my character, make this push build, and then also how I got all these Paragons on day 1 of the season, so that you can maybe also do this in future seasons. Now I'm not going to show you how I managed to level from 1 to 70 in just a few hours, but if you want to see that video, I have a link in the corner now. This video is going to be mostly what you do after 70, how you can quickly make your character go from a level 70 and like 0 gear into a fully fledged character that can do GR 90s plus within just a couple hours of the season launch. So for almost any character, as soon as you hit 70, you want to focus on your season journey. You want to get the full 6-piece here. Now the good thing for Demon Hunter this season was the fact that you got the impale set, which is really powerful and really strong even early on. So by focusing on the season journey even from an early start, I was able to get high Paragon in the first day of the season. So as you can see on the screen now, we are about 3.5 hours into the season. That means with leveling, and I'm now finished the season journey and I have all the 6 pieces now. And this is done solely by focusing on completing it as quick as possible. So now that we have the full 6-piece like this, our damage has just increased tremendously. Basically taking us from a Torment 4 build all the way up to probably a Torment 10 straight away, and then we can get a lot more gear from that. So after getting the full 6-piece, what I focused on was a combination of doing normal rifts and greater rifts. So I'd do about 5 normal rifts to get keys and death breath, and then I would jump over to doing more greater rifts to get more loot drop, but also to get the guaranteed greater rift gems, and of course also to level these gems here. So I have the full basic setup for the impale here. We have the 6-piece, we have the Carlos point, and we have holy point shot. So what I focused on here was getting the full impale set done first, so I can then start farming efficiently. And then later on I can transition over to the marauder, cluster arrow, or multishot for a build with more damage. And of course also did my DR 70 quite early on. We are about 5.5 hours into the season. I'm doing my DR 70 solo quite easily. And I did this by focusing on this build here. I try to get the main upgrades that I can. So whenever you're playing a build early on, you always want to make sure you know what you want to get. For instance, on this character here, it means upgrading rare daggers to get an ancient weapon. And it also means looking at your gear quite often to figure out where you can get the biggest upgrade. That means where can you get the most crit damage, the more crit chance. Those are usually the best options. So on this build here, I focus mainly on getting a good quiver and then also good gloves and shoulders. Now the power spike we got from the 6-piece, I was able to get up to about DR 80 really quickly, and then we kind of stalled. Not really in damage, but our toughness was not good enough to go higher than 80 really, where we could still play efficiently. And it was of course also on hardcore. But at this point, when you're this early on in the season, it's all about just making sure you're doing what is most efficient. That means you want to keep swapping between normal rifts and greater rifts, and doing maybe about 5 or so rifts, and then go over to GRs again and use all your keys. By this, you're able to get enough death breath to upgrade for weapons, and you can still get a good amount of blood shards, and also upgrade your legendary gems from greater rifts. And it's also really important, this is not just for early season, but to play efficiently. You want to make sure you don't have a lot of downtime in town just standing around. You want to be in a rift or a great rift at all times really. Now what I focused on most seasons is being prepared. I want to know what builds I'm making to start with, and then what builds I want to transition to over time. So for instance, I knew here I was getting impale with the season journey, but I knew I wanted to make a god 6 build for early T farming like I'm doing now. And I also want to make the marauder build for multishot for farming greater rifts. So by already having the plan in mind, I was able to focus on these goals while playing the impale build early on. That means whenever I found items that were used for the builds, I would of course save them. And I could also focus on also getting the gems early for those builds. That means, for instance, upgrading the Enforcer gem early on. Even if I'm not playing the build right now for it, it's still very good to have it ready when I want to swap to that build. So what you see now is me playing the god build for just farming quick GR 70s. I have played the impale and also perfected the gear quite a bit, and I have everything set up for the impale. And I've played that build for quite a few hours now. And after I got the full set for the impale, I then spent all my time and effort trying to transition over to the marauder multishot. The only thing I needed now was a few more pieces of gear and then upgrading some gems. So I made this build for just doing some really quick GRs so I can get those out of the way, and I could then make the marauder build. A quick note is that early on you really want to make sure you use the cube. For instance, using the recipe 4 to get the remaining items that you need. For me, for instance, that means I just turned a pair of gloves into the chest piece that I needed. You want to make sure you really use the recipe 4 early on, so you can always get the items that you're after. And of course, always make sure you are rolling your gear, since the stats are really important. you want to make sure you of course get something like the damage stats on the gloves. And also of course defensive stats are really important for most pieces of gear. Now of course don't spend 10 minutes rolling one piece of gear and using all your materials, but just get it to about 90% there. You can usually get there by just a few rolls. So this is now the first rift I did on my marauder build. And as you can see, it is just super high damage and it's able to blast really quickly. So at this point, we're about 8 hours into the season and I have 3 finished builds. We have the impale, we have the god 6 for doing T16s, and now we also have the marauder build. We were able to do this because we were focused on building all of them, and we knew exactly before the season even started what builds we wanted and what items we also were after. And as you can see here, of course, we have now transitioned to another build. So you want to try and get a really good weapon for this build as well. That means, of course, upgrading with the recipe 3 to get the ancient yanks recurve. Now, early on, when you have the full build, it's almost always the best option to use your best breath to upgrade weapons, as there's the biggest damage increase for you. And as you can see, we have just made the marauder build. We've been playing it for about half an hour or so, and we're already blasting GR 92s in just 2 to 3 minutes. Now, of course, it's really important early on to do your speeds, but you also want to make sure that you're upgrading for main gems. So I'm currently doing 92s, which are pretty quick as well. But it also makes sure that I can upgrade my main gems really easily since they are not very high level yet. And early on, while you're still getting upgrades quite often and you know what you're going after, your damage increases a lot. As you can see, we're doing 100s on the first day, and we're not even Paragon 800, and we can still do 100 GRs in 2.5 minutes. Now, if you want to know what makes for a good item, watch this guide here, as that explains what makes a good item. It's all about priority. Always want to make sure you're going after the correct item for your build currently. By doing this, you can actually start farming really high grades on even the first day of the season. And of course, you always want to focus on getting good weapons and all the items that have something like crit chance or crit damage, so being gloves or jewelry. Those are always going to be the most important pieces because they give a ton of damage. So to sum it up, before the season even starts, you want to have a plan. You want to know what items you want to get, what builds you want to make. So for me, I know personally for the Demon Hunter, I was going to get the impale set. So already before it even started, I of course make sure I had a build made for it and planned out. You can always just use Maxwell or my channel here to get ideas. And I focused mainly on getting a speed build for the impale done really quickly. And we also had a plan for leveling. We want to get to 1 to 70 in a nice and efficient way, of course. And then once we hit 70, we focus solely on getting the season journey done to get the 6 piece early on. After getting the 6 piece, we then focus on getting the remaining items we needed to make that build work. That means we needed the things for the cube and we needed the weapons and quiver. So after we had made that initial build and we got the 6 piece and the weapons, we were able to farm about tier 80s or so. So we farmed this for quite a few hours, making sure we got some good gear, some decent upgrades, and some good defensive stats as well, because we are playing hardcore. And then we basically tried to play as efficient as possible. That means we did about 5 normal rifts, and then we swapped over and did all the GRs we could for those keys we had. By doing this strategy, we were able to upgrade as many things from Desperate as possible, and then also upgrade legendary gems from the graders we then completed. So by doing this, we slowly but surely gained Paragon, more gear, and more overall damage, until we were then ready to transition over to the build we were really after, being the marauder multishot. So it all basically boils down to having a game plan before the season even starts, and of course following that plan, but also being able to adjust to the plan if it didn't pan out. And at this point, I have now gained so much Paragon and so much gear that I'm basically already in the end game of the season. So at this point, I can kind of do whatever I want to. I could, for instance, make a new alt, and I could gear that in just a few hours by using my main character. And if you want to see the best way to make an alt character and gear it up really quickly, make sure to watch the video here. And I'll see you over there. Peace out, everyone.